Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of the Wrestling with Fans podcast. We are a pro wrestling podcast created by fans for fans from a fan's perspective. My name is Kyle. This is episode 152. It's our post-WrestleMania roster deep dive. On this week's episode, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at the current rosters for both Raw and Smackdown. We're going to break down kind of by tier, where we'll talk about who could be in the main event picture, who's going to be your mid-card, upper-lower mid-card kind of guys, and then the current tag team situation. And I got to grab a drink. Thank goodness I have my trusty refrigerator ready. What is up, Chris? Welcome to the live stream, my friend. All right, before we dive in, you know how we do here. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/wrestling with fans. Hulk smash that like button to keep up to date with everything we do here at the Wrestling with Fans podcast. If you're watching the live stream here on YouTube, you already know about it. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. If you're listening to the audio version of the show, you can join us live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for the live recording of the Wrestling with Fans podcast on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, search Wrestling with Fans podcast, click the blue logo, and then click that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified anytime a new video goes up or anytime we go live here, click the little bell and set notifications to always. You can follow us on Instagram at Wrestling with Fans. Check us out on the web. Download or stream the audio show at any time on our website, wrestlingwithfans.com. New audio podcasts are posted every Saturday morning at 6 a.m., kicking your weekend off right with the audio goodness that is Wrestling with Fans. Take us on the go and download us to your favorite podcast listening device. You can get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Just search Wrestling with Fans podcast. Or if you go to wrestlingwithfans.com, click on links, and there'll be a link to find us on all the majors. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcast fix, you can find Wrestling with Fans. And finally, the email to the show, wwfshow@gmail.com. wwfshow@gmail.com. All right. You guys are having a wonderful week. Don't forget, we are doing a giveaway at 100 subscribers. We are now at 80. 20 away from giving away this Elite Series 80 Kevin Owens figure. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks to all the new subscribers over the last couple of days. I got a fig hunt video that I'm finishing the editing up, and it's actually going to be 2 parts. Our weekend trip, I used so much, or took so much footage that I stopped part 1 at about 20 minutes, and I'm finalizing the edits on that, and I'll get that up. That'll go up tomorrow. And then on Saturday, part 2 with whatever footage is left. And if you follow us on Instagram, you've already seen all the goodness that I picked up this past weekend, and some of the stuff that Jen picked up. At one point, she actually had more toys in her hand than I did, if you can believe that. And of course, we live stream 2 nights a week. We're bumping back to 2 nights, guys. Every Monday and Thursday Every Thursday, of course, is the live recording of the Wrestling with Fans podcast. And every Monday will just be a fun stream. We'll talk wrestling figures. We'll talk wrestling news. We'll just have a fun stream every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Maybe I'll make them both at 8. We'll see. But right now, Monday, 7:30, Thursdays at 8 p.m. So let's start off with Raw. Let's start off with the flagship show of WWE. What I think we can do here. Let me pull this up. Let me put this over here. We're going to look at the roster. We're going to talk about the complete roster for WWE. We're going to break it down by show. We're going to talk again. We're going to talk about who's, top of the card. What guys are going to be, can you be your main eventers? Which guys will be in your mid card? All that goodness. So let's start. Let me do this. Let's move over here. I'm pulling this up directly from Wikipedia. Okay. So we're looking directly at WWE's Wikipedia page here. I'm going to run down the Raw roster. As you can see, we got AJ Styles, Akira Tozawa, Andrew Garza, Lashley, Strowman, Wyatt, Cedric Alexander, Damien Priest, Drew Gulak, Drew McIntyre, Elias, Eric, Grand Metalik, Humberto Carrillo, Ivar, Jackson Riker, Jeff Hardy, Jinder Mahal, John Morrison, Keithley, Kofi Kingston, Lindsay Dorado, Mace, Miz, Mustafa Ali, MVP Omos, Randy Orton. Reginald apparently is on the Raw roster. That's news to me. Ricochet, Riddick Moss, Matt Riddle, R-Truth, Sheamus, Shelton Benjamin, T-Bar, Titus O'Neil, and Xavier Woods. Now, if you've been paying attention, which I'm sure you all have, Raw has been very repetitive in recent weeks. We're seeing variations of the same match over and over and over again. Even when there aren't COVID scares, even when people aren't out hurt, we are still seeing the same people wrestle each other each and every week. And I think WWE needs a shot in the arm. They need a creative shakeup. Not necessarily, not just in storylines, but in just people they're utilizing. Well, so I've broken this down. I've broken down your main eventers, your upper mid card, and then kind of your lower mid card. And I'll talk about the fourth category as we go along. But on Raw, of course, in your main event, you gotta have your WWE champion, Bobby Lashley. He is the guy right now, as far as Raw goes. He's the man leading the brand, MVP at his side. Also, you got Drew McIntyre, former WWE champion. Okay. So, yeah, Lashley and Drew. Also, you can put in that main event picture Randy Orton. Salome, welcome to the stream, my friend. Greetings from Hawaii. Aloha, my friend. Aloha. I want to visit Hawaii one day. Maybe when Jen and I tie the knot at some point, maybe we'll honeymoon in Hawaii. Maybe. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii one day. Also, in this main event picture, you can have the Fiend Bray Wyatt, and it's a slippery slope with the Fiend. It is a slippery slope when it comes to the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Because you get to a point with Bray where you're going to have to beat him. He's not going to be able to win every match and, be champ forever. And they ran into this problem last year. And it's the character. It's something, it's the way the character is. He doesn't have any weaknesses, but yet somehow he manages, to lose some matches. He's definitely the trickiest one to book by far. Also in this main event picture, you can see Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman could easily be main eventing, whether he's trying to get himself a title shot in current storyline. He's another guy you can have at the top of your card. Whether or not you want him as champion, that's up for personal debate. And finally, even though he is one half of the Raw Tag Team Champions, AJ Styles is a perennial main eventer no matter what roster he's on. So for Raw, the top 6 guys. You got Lashley. You got Bray Wyatt. You got Braun Strowman. You got AJ Styles. You got Randy Orton, and you got Drew McIntyre. So you kind of break it. I guess it depends. WWE wants you to believe that Bray Wyatt is a face. So you got 3 heels, Lashley, AJ, and Braun. 3 baby faces, Drew, Randy, and Bray. Even though Randy is pretty much a heel, but I think he kind of turned babyface now that he's teaming with Matt Riddle. Speaking of that, Salome says, RK Bro would actually make a great team, but I feel like they would be like MVP and Matt Hardy unless they can win the championship. I'm expecting at some point in the near future Randy to turn on Matt Riddle, and this will lead to a feud. I don't think this team is going to be long for this world. I think it's going to be a short-lived tag team. But those are my top 6 guys on Monday Night Raw. And right now you have Lashley, who's your champ, still in the follow-up from the WrestleMania feud into WrestleMania Backlash with Drew McIntyre. Braun Strowman is now getting in on this. So 3 of those 6 guys, and that's like your main event picture. Those are your top 6 guys. Those are the guys you can shuffle in and out of, the main title picture or have the big main feuds on Monday Night Raw. Now this next group, you got 7 wrestlers in this group. This next group I'm calling the upper mid card. And the only reason I'm saying this is these are guys you probably want to have win more matches than they lose. These are the guys you're going to have, fighting for the U.S. Championship. And, if they're on a good streak, you can have them bump in and be like a one-off title contender for Lashley. And this group consists of U.S. champion Sheamus. Sheamus is a former world champion, multiple-time world champion. So you could always, if he drops the U.S. title, you could always insert him into the main event picture against, Lashley or Drew or whoever. Then you got Jeff Hardy. I'm putting Jeff Hardy in this category. Because Jeff, even in his older age compared to, some of the other superstars, Jeff's getting up there in years. A lot of wear and tear on his body. Jeff is still one of the most over wrestlers WWE has. And if WWE needs like a one-off opponent for Lashley before whatever comes to him for SummerSlam, Jeff Hardy is a perfect person to insert in there. Or maybe a post-SummerSlam opponent for Bobby. They need something to, pick up before the next long-term feud begins. Got another former champion in here, The Miz. I'm putting The Miz in here. Miz is a former 2-time champ. If you haven't watched the 24 on The Miz, you need to watch it. It was excellent. I've always loved The Miz. And after seeing, watching 24/7 and getting to know him a lot more, it makes me like him even more. You understand a lot of the crap that he went through as a young superstar. Being in the main event of WrestleMania against John Cena, and the focus being on Cena and The Rock instead of The Miz and Cena. And then the fall from grace after losing the title and him clawing and fighting his way back up. So I would recommend, if you haven't checked it out on the network, The Miz 24/7. Worth a watch. But he's another guy. You can insert him in, for like a one-off opponent. You can put him in like US title feuds. You can use somebody like The Miz and even John Morrison. Morrison's going to go in here with him. So I guess this is 8 superstars in this category. So you got Miz and Morrison in there. You can have, like a 2-on-1 feud if you want to build up a title contender. If you want to build up a babyface title contender for heel champ Lashley, you can use Miz and Morrison. So, which, coincidentally, is the next person on my list, Damien Priest. I think he is like 40 or 41 years old. He's, relatively speaking, late to the game to WWE. A veteran of the ring, though. He's got a great look, a great moveset, very charismatic. I'm a huge fan of his work in NXT. He was given a good spotlight at WrestleMania, teaming with Bad Bunny. But now, post-WrestleMania, without the Bad Bunny, Damien Priest, they need to establish him, who he is, what he's all about, and kind of cement him. He needs to come out of this feud with Miz and Morrison on top. Because then if you beat guys like Miz and Morrison, you're setting up Damien Priest to be a future, world title contender or even a future world champion. They really need to do good by Damien Priest here. And whether that's a feud with maybe Sheamus for the U.S. title after this is done, after their current feuds are over, you can do that. But Damien Priest is definitely at that tier, not quite at the top, but just a bit below. I'm also throwing Matt Riddle in there too. Matt Riddle is one of those guys. And they have this kind of short-lived partnership with Randy Orton, RK Bro. Which, again, like I said a few minutes ago, I think it's going to be one of those short-lived partnerships where eventually Randy will turn on Matt Riddle and it'll lead to a feud between the two. But working with a guy like Randy Orton, whether being a tag team and probably an eventual breakup and feud, is only going to help elevate Riddle to that next level. I don't think Riddle's quite yet ready to be inserted into like a world title picture, but he's right on the brink. And I think a really good feud with Randy Orton here over the next couple months, however they play it out as a team and then break up and feud, is really going to go a long way to help establish Matt Riddle as one of those top guys and a guy that they can count on to be at that top level. Matt Riddle is really over with the fans. Especially, again, I love his work in NXT. He's one of my favorite NXT competitors. But he's a guy that I think he's almost there, and I think he will be there within the next year. He'll be up at that top level, feuding for the world title, or maybe even a future world champion. The next man in this kind of upper mid-card level. The limitless one, Keithley. Now, we have not seen Keithley in quite a while. Depending on which rumor and innuendo you want to believe, could be an injury, could be, COVID related. It could just be, we don't have anything for you right now, pal. I've heard everything and anything to explain why Keithley hasn't been on TV. But Keithley is one of those guys. Again, he's kind of up there in age. He's, I think he's 40. Maybe. No, he's 36. So he's a little younger than a lot of these guys. Okay. Damien Priest is only 30. I thought he was a couple years older. But he's kind of getting up there. You got your world champion, Bobby Lashley. He's 44. But you couldn't tell me Bobby Lashley's 44. Drew's 35, so he's kind of, in the prime of his life, prime of his career. And you got a guy, let's look at some of these guys we talked about. Matt Riddle, 35. All kind of in the prime of their life. Miz is 40. Okay. Miz will be 41 later this year. So, but again, he's kind of in like the prime. Randy Orton, 41. I knew Randy Orton was a little over my age. And I think AJ's like 41. No, AJ's 43. Okay. I knew AJ was a little older than everybody else. But Keithley's one of those guys. Again, he was late to the party getting to WWE. Great run in NXT. Short-lived double champion. Short-lived NXT champion because they called him up, to the main roster. He was featured pretty, well early on, beating Randy Orton at his first WWE pay-per-view, like 2 weeks after he debuted on the main roster. But he's a guy I think the fans get behind him. He's a big boy, but he moves like a guy half his size. And it's definitely a unique thing. And I think if WWE capitalizes on that, Keithley can definitely be a future world champion. At least feud for the title. They don't want to put the belt on him. I don't know why you wouldn't. But he could definitely be at that upper echelon. But he's not quite there yet. And this last person I'm putting in this kind of upper mid-card area. Like the second tier down. There's probably going to be a lot of people that disagree with me. But, and that's only because WWE has defined him down so much. And that's Ricochet. I think Ricochet has the potential, maybe not to be world champion, maybe not to contend for the world title, but that next tier down. I think Ricochet has, he's a good-looking guy. He has a great moveset. He's amazing in the ring. He may not be the best on his promos, but you could pair him with somebody like an MVP style person that talks for him. And, Ricochet is one of the best pure athletes WWE has. And I think they're doing him a disservice by basically making him as a glorified enhancement guy. But I think given, some good story, the right opponents, the right story, Ricochet could be up in that, like, again, not that top level, but that next tier down. Feuding for, like, the U.S. title. Maybe using him to elevate a future world title contender. But you got to give him some wins. So, again, that kind of upper mid-card level. I've got Damien Priest, Jeff Hardy, Miz and Morrison, Matt Riddle, Sheamus, Keithley, and Ricochet. These are guys you want to have win more often than not on television. Now, this next here, I'm kind of putting at the lower mid-card. I'm not quite calling these guys jobbers. I'm not calling them enhancement guys, but I'm calling them, they're going to be a little bit lower than the previous two categories that I'm going over. These are guys you can have win a match every now and then. But more often than not, they're going to be used to get over someone else and bump them up another level. Again, I'm not calling them enhancement guys because you want these guys to win matches every once in a while. You want to give them some kind of credibility. Because if, let's just say, for example, Damien Priest, and we'll go with the first person to have one here, and that is Elias. Okay. Elias is one of those guys. He's not going to be a world champion. Elias may not even be like a U.S. champion on Raw. But Elias is a guy who can go out there and help get somebody over. You have him win a few matches to keep him give him some credibility. You don't want him losing all the time because at some point, when you see somebody lose over and over and over and over and over again, say somebody like a Ricochet defeats Elias, and it's not going to mean nothing because Elias is losing 30 matches in a row. It doesn't mean anything. So these are guys, you want to give them a win every once in a while. But for the most part, they're going to go out there, they're going to make everybody else look good. They're going to have great TV matches. You give them time to go out there and just work. Just do what they do. But again, Elias is in this group, as is his tag team partner, Jackson Riker. Also going with Mason T-Bar, formerly of Retribution. Now, I believe that T-Bar, or Dominic Dijakovic, could easily be in the upper mid card or even maybe even the main event if they correct course quickly. Because otherwise, if they keep with them with this T-Bar, this former Retribution thing without a mask, and they just kind of squander him, he's going to lose all credibility. Dominic Dijakovic was huge in NXT, constantly challenging the top guys. He was one of those dudes that you put in with the top guys, had a great feud, had great matches, but he'd always come up just a little bit short. But here on the main roster, he's been masked in Retribution, and that, as we know, has been a total disaster over the last year. Same thing goes with Mace. I don't think Mace or Dio Madden is there yet. He's a guy I think he's still a little green around at the edges, but has a lot of potential. He's another big guy. McMahon loves his big dudes. But Mason T-Bar, I think right now, you give them some wins every now and then you use them to get that upper mid-card guys over and help, bump them up another level. I'm also throwing in their former stablemate, Mustafa Ali. And again, this is none of this categorizing is indicative of these guys' talents. I think they are all extremely talented. However, this is just the perception that I have based off of what we see on television. Okay. And the only one I'm kind of going away from in that definition would be Ricochet. But Mustafa Ali, amazing worker. Great worker. Has great matches with a lot of people. But he has been defined down so much with Retribution that I'm not even sure if they can save him at this point. They really dropped the ball, literally and figuratively, with Mustafa Ali in the last year and a half. And I don't know if they're going to be able to, if he's going to be able to recover from that. But I think he's still going to be used to go out there and have great TV matches. He go out there and have matches with the likes of, Keithley, Matt Riddle. What's up, Chris? Those guys that help get them over and elevate them up. Same thing for somebody like an Angel Garza. He's not going to be a world champion. He could even be a U.S. champion. He could bump up to that upper mid card level, I think, at some point. But I think right now, just what they're doing with him being the ladies' man and all that crazy crap, I just don't see it. Again, this is just my opinion. I'm not taking anything away. I think all these guys are very talented, but this is just kind of where I see things going. Not everybody can be at the top of the card all the time. And the final two people, putting Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin. Shelton the veteran, Shelton and Cedric, another great cruiserweight. And they've kind of been defined down since being kicked out of the Hurt Business. To the point now where they are kind of just used to get guys over. And again, I think it'd be a good fit for both of them. And rounding out Raw, I'm going to put, I don't have any names on it. And the same thing is going to apply to SmackDown. But it's, your enhancement guys. I've used just about every name that's listed on, the official Wikipedia. There's a few other names that I left in simply just the tag team, like Lucha House Party, the New Day, the Viking Raiders, Omos. You can kind of insert them in wherever you want. But what I would like to see WWE do, they have such a large roster. They have so many people at the Performance Center that are training. If they can go out there and take some bumps and sell, have them come on Raw. And again, this same thing will apply to SmackDown. Have them come to Raw and just be enhancement guys. You want to give, Damien Priest an easy win on TV in like a 5-minute match? Bring somebody up from the PC, have him go out there and make Damien Priest look like $1 million. The issue, part of this, the whole premise of this podcast this week is WWE's constant 50-50 booking. Sorry, I got the Caps Pens game on in the background. It's 2-2. But they always have to have 50-50 booking. You get a win this week, you lose the next week. You lose this week, you get your win back next week. Nobody gets over that way. Very few people get over. The only people that really get over are the guys at the top of the card, your main event guys, your top 5 or 6 guys on the brand. And then a couple of that next tier down who a lot of it is just the fans love these guys. But what WD needs to do, and again, this is just my opinion, is bring some of these guys in from the PC. Doesn't have to be anybody that's appeared on NXT. Bring in some of your guys from the PC that have enough experience to go out there and take some bumps, who can sell, and bring them in as just kind of enhancement guys. Because you can have them come in, work 2 or 3 weeks in a row, then you send them down to the PC. They can show up in NXT a year later, and nobody will be the wiser. I mean, some people will know, but for the most part, nobody's going to be the wiser. You can have them come, and you can do the same thing for the women too. And I'm not breaking down the women on this roster, on this show, because to be perfectly honest, the women's division on both Raw and SmackDown is just pure disaster right now. We'll save that discussion for another time. But again, I went over all these. The top guys I have on Raw, just to recap for those tuning in: Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, AJ Styles, Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt. And again, AJ isn't a tag team. He is one half of the Raw tag team champs, but he is a perennial main eventer wherever he goes. Let's move over to the Blue Brand. Let's talk about SmackDown. Let's run down the SmackDown roster. Now, again, their roster is a lot smaller because if you remember during the drafts, it's 3 picks to 2. It's a 3-hour show versus a 2-hour show. So let's run down the complete SmackDown roster. You got Aleister Black, Angelo Dawkins, Apollo Crews, Big E, Cesaro, Chad Gable, Commander Aziz, Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Dominic Mysterio, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Kevin Owens, King Corbin, Montez Ford, Murphy, Otis, Rey Mysterio, Robert Roode, Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Slapjack. It's a shorter roster. SmackDown was a lot more difficult. SmackDown was a lot more difficult to do just because there's just not a lot of people on the roster. But I've broken it down similar as I did to Raw. In the main event on the SmackDown side, obviously you have the tribal chief, the head of the table. Acknowledge him, Roman Reigns, your Blue Universal Champion. Obviously, he's in the main event. He's at the top of the card. He's the head of the table. I'm also putting in, of course, Daniel Bryan. They had that big match coming up on SmackDown. If you're listening to the audio version, that just happened. And the fate of Daniel Bryan on SmackDown is already known if you're listening to this, because the show will go up Saturday. Again, Daniel Bryan you can insert Daniel Bryan in wherever, but he is a perennial main eventer. The fans still love Daniel Bryan. He can still put on great matches. Also have the other man in the triple threat match from WrestleMania, Edge. Even though Edge technically, I think, was supposed to have been on Raw and isn't technically assigned to a brand right now, his most recent work was on SmackDown, so we're going to leave him on SmackDown. Again, the Hall of Famer Edge is a main eventer, no matter what he does. He may not be in the title picture, but he is a main eventer. he's going to draw people in. Okay. We're also going to throw Seth Rollins into the mix here. Seth, again, former multiple-time world champion. And same thing with the last man on this list, Kevin Owens. So on SmackDown, I have 5 guys that you can easily put into any main event. And it kind of breaks down pretty evenly because you got Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins are probably your 2 top heels on SmackDown. Daniel Bryan and Kevin Owens are arguably your top 2 baby faces on SmackDown. And Edge, well, Edge, I'm not really sure. I think he was a baby face and he kind of went heel, but he was a baby face with heel tendencies. But Edge can do either. I think your top 5 guys on SmackDown are pretty easy. In this next tier, you could throw really any of these guys in there and to round it out to 6. But it was just such a difficult list. In that kind of upper mid-card area. Which really, I guess I can't even say, because there's really no upper and lower on SmackDown. Because all of these guys are great. I think they would fit in the upper mid-card on Raw. And they're just so good. It's so hard to, couldn't separate it like an upper and a lower. So I just kind of lumped them all in together. And there's 10 guys here, I think. SmackDown has a solid mid-card where I think Raw doesn't. We'll run down the names real quick, and then we'll kind of break it down a little further. So in my SmackDown mid-card range, you got Apollo Crews and Big E. They're feuding over the IC title. Cesaro, who I think is ready to be moved up into that main event. Some listening may argue that Cesaro is a main eventer on SmackDown. I think he has the potential to be, but I don't think they've fully gotten behind him. That win against Seth at WrestleMania was huge, and I think will go a long way to elevate him up to that main event level. But I think it's just a hair under. Maybe another big win against Seth or, something like that. Could definitely, put him up there. Then you have the perennial mid-carder Baron Corbin. I love Baron Corbin. I love Baron Corbin in front of a live crowd. I'm not a big fan of Baron Corbin in the Thunderdome crowd. Say what you want about King Corbin, but when it comes to interacting with the live audience and playing a great heel off of a live audience, King Corbin can read a crowd. Something he does, I think, very well. However, with the Thunderdome and not, no live audience to go off of, I think he has suffered. And I don't think it has been the best time for King Corbin in the last year or so. But he's one of those guys, you can put him in there with the babyface champ as a one-off opponent at a pay-per-view. Or, a big main event TV match. You want to throw him in a title match with a babyface champ. King Corbin's your guy. Great one-off opponent for like a babyface main eventer. So he's up there. And then you got Sami Zayn. Sami may not be a world champion in WWE. He was an NXT champion. He might not be a Universal or WWE champion. But Sami is definitely always in that next tier down. He's going to be challenging for US and IC titles on whatever brand he's on. I think given the right story, Sami could be a great, opponent for a babyface champion. He's great on the mic. He tells a great story with his mouth. Tells a great story in the ring. And he's just, again, he's kind of like right there in that next level down underneath like your top guys. I'm going to put both Mysterios in there. Ray more so than Dominic. Now, Ray is a perennial fan favorite. The classic underdog. Fans love Rey Mysterio still. If you needed a good babyface opponent for a heel champion, Rey would be a great one-off for a pay-per-view as a title contender. Dominic, not so much, but he's still so young has a lot of time in him, but I think being paired with his father is helping him out. We're also going to throw in Jey Uso here. Main event Jey Uso. And I'm really happy for Jey because Jimmy's been out injured. Apparently, he's been ready to return since the Royal Rumble, depending on which news source you want to listen to. But with that, usually with WWE, if you have a tag team, one man gets injured, both men disappear from TV. But they've been utilizing Jey so well in his story with Roman Reigns, being a part of the Samoan dynasty, the Samoan bloodline. You know, Roman and Paul and Jey Uso. It's been great. I'm so glad for Jey. You know, he's kind of nicknamed in the main event because he's main evented a lot of SmackDowns in the last 6 months. I don't know what that'll do when Jimmy comes back and they may go back to the Usos as a tag team, or they may have them work some singles matches going forward. I'm not sure. But either way, right now, Jey Uso is in that next tier down. Challenge easily for an IC title. You know, if you had a babyface champ that you wanted to set up for Roman down the line, Jey would be a great person. You could put it as a one-off to kind of weaken him up. We're also putting Shinsuke Nakamura in here. I love Shinsuke Nakamura. One of my favorite current WWE wrestlers. I know he hasn't been utilized the best. His best work was in his feud with AJ Styles like 3 years ago. Great in NXT. Hasn't really been utilized to his fullest potential on the main roster. And depending on who you believe, he's only still in WWE because he can go surfing whenever he wants. Which, I guess I can't fully blame him for that. But Shinsuke is another one of those guys. If you needed a one-off, a credible one-off opponent for someone, Shinsuke is your man. And then the final person I'm putting in this category, the recently returned this past Friday on SmackDown, Aleister Black, who's been MIA for like the last 6 or 7 months. Extremely talented, unique look, great in the ring, but they really haven't done him justice. Again, great in NXT. He had the cool entrance. Be interesting to see what they do with him. But I'm not sure. I mean, in my eyes, yes, Aleister Black could be a future world champion for WWE. Realistically, I don't think that's a possibility. But he could easily be a guy you set up as like a one-off or a short-term feud for your, heel champ or babyface champ, depending on who's champ at the time. And then there's a couple guys I couldn't really classify. Otis and Gable. They've been working as a tag team. Same thing with the Street Profits. You got Rude and Ziggler. Again, Rude and Ziggler could, be in that mix. They could be a great one-off for a babyface champ when they're not involved in the tag division. And of course the Street Profits. And then there's Slapjack. Of all the people on SmackDown, Slapjack would be the one person I'll probably put in the lower mid card, and that's only because he's been defined down so much based on his time in Retribution. But I really enjoyed Shane Thorne in NXT. I just can't help that he was saddled with a ridiculous gimmick and storyline, and an even more ridiculous name when moving up to the main roster. But that is my roster breakdown. Again, SmackDown, we got the main event guys, Roman, Daniel Bryan, KO, Seth, and Edge. Again, over in Raw, you got Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton, AJ Styles, Braun Strowman, and Bray Wyatt. To me, those are the top 5 and 6 on each brand. I went down the mid-card. SmackDown, they're so talented. They're so deep in that mid-card. It's kind of hard to classify an upper and a lower. On Raw, I kind of have it, like 8 and 7. Upper mid, lower mid. Again, all these guys are in the mix. Your upper mid carders, you wanted to win more matches than not. Your lower mid card, they're going to probably lose more matches than not, but you still want them to win. And again, I said this, when talking about Raw, and I'll repeat it again here, recapping SmackDown. You have so many people at the PC. Bring in some guys in the PC. that are comfortable, that you feel comfortable enough with to go out there and have a one-off match with someone. The one thing I miss about classic wrestling, this is like 80s, early and mid, even into the late 90s. You had job guys. I don't say jobber is a disrespectful term because they were enhancement talent, but they were referred to as jobbers, job guys. They would go out there and they would make whoever they were wrestling look like $1 million. It was their job to go out there and lose. It was their job to go out there and get somebody over. And the thing is, I think WWE I think I read somewhere not long ago, they have over 300 performers under contract. You mean to tell me you don't have a half dozen or a dozen guys that are training at the PC, don't necessarily have to be NXT guys, but they're training at the PC. They're maybe ready to move into the NXT television. Send them up to Raw for a month. Let them go out there and wrestle 3 or 4 matches over a month. Put guys over. Go out there and make them look like $1 million. You bring them back down. They sit for a couple weeks back at the PC, and then you can debut them on NXT. You can utilize this massive amount of talent that you have under contract and, bring some guys, bring some girls in, have them just go out there and be enhancement, put people over. They get real life in-ring work live on television. And then you can send them back down and then move them into NXT and then eventually back up to the main roster one day, maybe. Instead of, having, Jeff Hardy or Damien Priest lose every week or having a guy like Ricochet lose every week. Bring these guys in, have them put over your talent, send them back to the PC. And you can rotate people in. And it's funny, like, you hear now, like, everybody's so against the term job guy or jobber or enhancement guy. But I tell you what, I could probably, if I really sat down and thought, I could probably name a ton of enhancement guys from back in the day. I mean, the Brooklyn Brawler, Steve Lombardi, and all of his 9,000 gimmicks is probably the most famous one. Barry Hardy, Barry O, which is family of Randy Orton, his uncle. Dwayne Gilbert, famous for being a job guy. And then they had him copy Goldberg, and Goldberg was born, and he kind of went up. But Dwayne Gill, journeyman job guy. So many of them. They all had personalities. You cheered for him. You rooted for him to get that win. Barry Horowitz, for the long time, was a job guy. But he was great at what he did. He's memorable. I can remember him, 40, 30, 40 years later. I'm not sure when exactly. It's at least 30 years later. I still remember Barry Horowitz. And it's not because he was a job guy or an enhancement guy. It's because he had a personality. He was good at what he did. You remember those people. And I think if WWE utilized some of the talent that aren't being used on television, PC guys, NXT people that aren't currently being used, you can help get over your current guys on Raw and SmackDown. No more 50-50 booking. You can do squash matches on TV. I miss squash matches. You don't have anything for, Braun Strowman to do this week. Have him beat two on one on one. Just have him go out there and squash the guy in like 2 minutes. It gets him over. It gets your other guys some work. And, it helps people. It's so frustrating to watch. It's so frustrating to watch Raw every week. SmackDown's been pretty damn good. But Raw is just so infuriating at times. And I think if WWE utilized their talent, over 300 talent under contract, again, you have some of these PC guys come in, work with your big talent, take them off TV, let them keep training, and then you bump them into NXT, 6 months down the road. Get rid of 50-50 booking. Same thing applies for the women. I'm not going to dive into the women's rosters here because, again, as I said a while ago, the women's division in WWE is just disaster right now. Guys, that's going to do it for this week's show. Before we wrap up, let me just remind you guys, Facebook.com/Wrestling with Fans. Hulk, smash that like button to keep up to date with everything we do here on the Wrestling with Fans podcast. If you're watching us live on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. We are so close to 100 subscribers. We're sitting at 80 right now. And we'll be giving away a Kevin Owens figure when we hit the big 100. If you're listening to the audio version of the show, head over to youtube.com, search Wrestling with Fans podcast, click the blue logo, click that subscribe button. Once we hit 100 subscribers, it'll be youtube.com/Wrestling with Fans. You get your custom URL at 100 subscribers. That's the main thing I want to get 100 for. So subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell icon and set notifications always if you want to be notified anytime a new video goes up or anytime we are live here on Wrestling with Fans. Follow us on Instagram at Wrestling with Fans. Check us out on the web. Download or stream the shows at any time on our website, WrestlingWithFans.com. New audio shows are posted every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. Start your weekend off right. If you missed the live stream, check out the audio on the weekend. And again, I apologize for last week's show going up so late. I thought I had set it to post. We were away for the weekend and had no way to correct it until we got back. So I apologize for 151 coming out late. Or you can take us on the go and download us to your favorite podcast listening device. You can get us wherever you get your podcast fix. Just search Wrestling with Fans podcast. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all the big ones. Links to find the show at WrestlingWithFans.com. And finally, the email for the show is wwfshow@gmail.com. Again, that's wwfshow@gmail.com. But again, if you haven't done so already, guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel. My little stinger transition is not quite working the way I wanted it to. Boo-hoo. But that's going to do it. Again, we stream every Monday and Thursday. Guaranteed streams Monday and Thursday. And maybe a third stream throughout the week whenever I got some free time. Streaming 5 nights a week was just too taxing. Working 2 jobs and then coming home, eating dinner, doing my stuff around the house, and then streaming on YouTube every single night was just too much. It was a lot of fun for the couple months that I did it, but it was just too much. We're going to cut back for 2 nights a week for right now. We'll probably add a third night. I really enjoy doing the Tuesday toy chats, but my future stepdaughter is playing softball this year at Jen and I's alma mater. So we, going to softball games on Tuesday evenings, and I don't want to rush home, just to get on YouTube. But have no fear, Tuesday Toy Chat will return later this summer. We'll probably switch up the nights, but that's going to do it. Thanks to everybody who joined live. Chris, Salome here on YouTube. Again, every Thursday on the YouTube channel, join us for the live stream, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Once again, my name is Kyle. We will see you next time, right here on Wrestling with Fans.